Hello, my name is Irrelevant, and I just had a project that I finished recently and wanted to share in case it would be of any use to anyone else, or either in technical or an inspirational means. Um, so, a few months ago, I had bought or commissioned a M3 white scout car for a game of bolt action because I had absolutely no transports and wanted to do something different in that game. And after a lot of stuff, I have only just gotten around to actually working on it. And before I sat down and, well, after the game, I actually dropped the vehicle, broke one of the wheels, and broke off one of the rear medium machine guns. Now, the second part actually gave me an idea of what if I could magnetize those. And that's what this project mainly was. So, what I ended up doing was I snapped off the other rear medium machine gun, and I then inserted some magnets in the places where the MGs used to sit. I did find that they did not want to get super glued back into place, so I thought something a little bit more interesting should be done. Either green stuff or this. But there's a question of how would I put some kind of magnet inside the MGs themselves? And the obvious answer to me was to not use a second magnet at all, but instead to use a piece of metal. So, inside the very bottom of each of these is the tiniest bit. I'm not sure I can get my camera to focus on it, but you can see that shine right there. That little dot is a piece of 24 gauge galvanized steel wire. Now, it is important to note that if you do want to do something like this, not all steel is magnetically. Actually, I forget the term for it now. I should know it. Um, Stainless steel, especially if I recall, tends to lose its magnetism. There are particular details in material science that I have long since forgotten. I think it has to do with martensite and cooling, or something. It has to do with some very detailed metallurgical stuff about whether a steel will be magnetic. But I'd recommend if you want to buy wire specifically for this, you take a magnet that you are intending to use, or something similar, maybe something that is less likely to damage electronics, such as the little magnet sheet stickers, like you would have on a fridge. Take that with you to whatever hardware store of your choice and see if there's any wires that might be useful. 24 gauge seemed about the right size, especially for me to drill out with my Army Painter drill set. I decided to spring for the money on. At the moment, I have a much bigger drill than I used. If I recall correctly, I used the absolute smallest one to end up fitting the wire in there. But I first drilled a hole in the very bottom, and then I stuck the piece of wire in that hole. Well, then I added super glue, and then I stuck the piece of wire in there, let it sit for a minute, let it dry, let it solidify, and then I snipped it off with a pair of wire cutters. Do not use your regular plastic cutters, your hobby snips, so to say. That will ruin the blades. Use something that you want to use on metal. It'll be hardier and it's not going to care as much about being messed up. So, snipped it off, and then I also tried to file it down a bit so it wasn't sticking out so much. And I also realized that it is important to how, please forgive the shaky cam, the MG sits. As the first one, I believe, when I first started filing it off, sat more like that. Just the surface that I was leaving behind for it to sit on. I think one of them, yeah, I guess it's still a bit of an upward angle, if I can actually focus on the darn thing. Still a bit of an upward angle compared to what it was originally modeled as. This one doesn't angle up quite as much, but it also gives a little bit of character to it, I think. Now, The man I commissioned the scout car from also gave me passengers and crew. Unfortunately, he did say that they were not designed specifically for the scout car, but were instead intended for, I believe, the half track. I forget if it was one of the variants of the half track. Each figure was completely loose. So to go over the things I worked on first, the crew, I decided to use a piece of thin food packaging. Now, the food was not exposed to this. It was wrapped in plastic inside of the box. It was a box of crackers. Decided to use some of the packaging, slice that up into thin little strips, which I had done previously as part of trying to base some soldiers with wooden planks, but I realized it would also work perfectly for allowing me, if I can pick it up, to give them a bench to sit on together, which makes it infinitely easier to, instead of putting in and taking out one man at a time, just set 3 guys on a bench and have them stay there. I actually decided to make them kind of sided, so this one would technically be oriented the other way around. Forgive me. But actually, I need to move the camera a bit. This is my first time making a proper video. I'm not sure if it can be considered a proper video. Well, this is the first time I've gotten that stuck that way. But I decided to try to make it lively with the passengers. I had the man covering his ear on one side, and the guy with the Thompson looked like an NCO, have him towards the back. The idea of man covering his ear is going to be towards the MG that is theoretically firing, and the NCO would be towards the back, ready to lead his men out. And then, for the reverse, I would have a BAR guy at the very back, and the Browning gentleman, and if I recall correctly, that was an M1 carbine, which I decided to put alongside the man with the MG, and just as the idea for him being a loader of sorts. I am not going to make specific crew setups for who is in there. I'm just going to have a crew setup. I'm sorry, not crew, but passenger setups. I'm just going to have a set of passengers, unless I decide to go crazy and do something like, I'm not going to do airborne. But if I wanted, I guess I could do airborne specific passengers. The gunner was the place where it was most obviously not intended for the scout car, because his feet were raised, his heels were raised in a way that suggests, I guess, he was intended to be leaning back to man the gun, but there was no good way for him to sit in there and hold on to the gun, so to say. So I gave him a little bit of that cardboard folded over so that he actually could stand up on his own. He stands well enough front to back. He can stand some wiggling side to side. Overall, I'm satisfied with it. The actually oddest one is going to be the driver. Now, for him, okay, I don't have the removal tool, but for him, I decided to give him a steering wheel, as he was not modeled with one, but specifically using more of that steel wire, so that way I can easily set him in there. Okay, perhaps easily is a relative term. I actually, because I'm looking at this through the camera, I don't know if he's not. If I do make videos more regularly, I will get a camera stand. Okay. Well, with 2 hands, this is a lot easier. But ultimately, the man is intended to then be extracted, because he is very difficult to get out with just your fingers, be extracted with a magnet on a stick, which allows me to have a lot more fine control. Can't really be put in there like that. But yeah, it's just a real quick and easy setup, and as part of testing how well or how long it would take to magnetize, I put one on the bottom, which may help me with storage and transportation. I haven't tested that quite yet, but this was a very basic idea. I hope it may be of inspiration to some other people, in giving some more life to your vehicles and their passengers and crew. Um, oh, yes, also on the passengers, because they were made for a different vehicle, they didn't have fully modeled backs. So I decided to take some green stuff, take a sculpting knife, and just do something up real quick. So that is pretty much the whole deal. I will hopefully upload something with a paint job on this and the in progress M8, M20 scout car over there. But be that as it may, I hope that this was of use and interest. Have a good day.